So he believes that the Megillah, that the 70 years had completed. What happened was that at the time of the destruction, Jeremiah prophesied that the temple will be destroyed for 70 years, and after 70 years it would be rebuilt. Now, one of the interesting things about that, hey Sam.
Hi.
Welcome. So one of the interesting things about that is that we know that the calculation simply doesn't make sense. The 70 years were not up. And why did we make this miscalculation? Now, of course, we know that making miscalculations is not something that is new in history. The Jewish people, about 1,000 years prior to that, had also miscalculated the date when Moses was supposed to come down, but they had 40 days and they got it wrong. Achashverosh is 70 years. Now, how did Achashverosh miscalculate the years? So let me give you a little bit of background. The Jewish people lived in the land of Israel for 850 years before the destruction of the temple, approximately. So they're approximately there for 440 years before the temple was built, and then it was stood for another 410 years. So a total of 850 years. Now what happens is it happens in stages. In the year 3,320, okay, 3,320, which would be we are now in the year 5781. So that would have been what was that? 5781. Come on, let's do the quick calculations. Okay, it happens to be that from that date was the day that Nebuchadnezzar went and conquered Jerusalem. Now, he doesn't actually destroy the temple for another 18 years. But he gets rid of the Jewish king at the time, is the king of Judah, of Yehuda, is the king Yechoniah. Hey, Shelley, welcome. So there's the king of Yechoniah. He is exiled 7 years later. And this is all important in the year 3,327. And then 11 years later, the temple in Jerusalem is destroyed. Okay? So in the year 3,338. Now, the predecessor to King Achashverosh was a man by the name of Belshazzar. Belshazzar thinks that the 70 years have been completed. So let's just say the temple was destroyed in the year 3,338. So when 70 years from then? 70 years from then would be the year 3,408. Belshazzar thinks that the 70 years had passed in the year 3,390, because he thought that the 70 years start from when Nebuchadnezzar arrives. And Belshazzar makes a feast and he dies. Okay, there's a whole story behind Belshazzar, Achashverosh's predecessor. Now, in the year 3,395, that's when the story of that's when the story of the feasts take place. That's 68 full years from the destruction of the not from the destruction, from the exile of the king Yechoniah, and that's when many of the Jewish people were exiled at that point. But the temple was not destroyed itself for another 11 years. So he was going based on, it was only 68 years plus 2 partial years. He counted the beginning of the 1 year and the end of the 1 year and the beginning of the other year coming. That's how he calculated 70 years. Okay. So at the beginning of King Achashverosh's reign, he started off hating the Jews. He always hated the Jews. The only thing that changed is that at the beginning, he was concerned that if he touched the Jews, he was very worried that the Jews would the temple would be rebuilt, and when the temple's rebuilt, we lose all the Jews. That's his concern. So what does he do? He doesn't mess around with the Jews. He doesn't want to make any trouble for them. But once the 70 years are over, he says, oh, the prophecy didn't come true. The temple is not going to be rebuilt. Now we can party. Not only could we party, we could also start messing with the Jews and making destruction. He was worried that the Jews would go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple and overthrow him, which for whatever reason, nobody knows why he would have such fear. But what does end up happening is in the year 3408, which is exactly 70 years from when the temple was destroyed, and it is also 13 years from when Achashverosh makes the feast. 13 years after the Purim story, the temple is rebuilt, starts to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. Hey, Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm late.
No worries. I'm just giving a little background to a few Purim ideas.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's just an understanding of that the temple was actually built 13 years afterwards, and he miscalculated the 70 years, and he counted from the wrong date, and even with then he was really 2 years short. Now, if you look at the beginning of the Megillah, you'll see that Achashverosh, it says, "Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh," right? Hu Achashverosh. It doesn't say King Achashverosh. It says just Achashverosh. Later on in the Megillah, it calls him King HaMelech Achashverosh or something like that. But why, when it introduces him, does it not call him King Achashverosh? And that's where some people learn out that when you look at King Achashverosh, he was an evil man from beginning to end. Okay, so there's somebody who say Achashverosh, head and tail. Achashverosh means that at the beginning and the end, he was always had the evilness with him. He always had issues. He hated the Jews at the beginning. He hated the Jews at the end. He was never a good king. We only call him king, so to speak, when we have to. But when we introduce him, we don't introduce him as the epitome of a good king, of a person. What happens with Achashverosh? You see that he's a man that goes and sways with the time. I love this. The Midrash Rabbah says about Achashverosh, if you look at him, he was a man that was convinced by his friend to kill his wife, right? And then he was convinced by his wife to kill his friend, right? First, Haman convinces Achashverosh at the feast when Vashti refuses to come out in a birthday suit because she's suddenly got all types of pimples and doesn't look as pretty as she normally does. So Haman, who's by the way called in the Megillah Memuchan, at the discussion for another time, at that point, is called Memuchan. Haman says, why don't you kill her? Why does Haman want you to kill Vashti? Because he wants his daughter to become king and he wants to get more power. At that point, if you say, Haman says, well, I'm not really the highest of advisors, but who cares? Let me give this advice. And he advises that Vashti should be killed. The funny thing is that the very cause that he tried to do, he tried to get Vashti killed. Vashti was an evil lady, very, very evil lady. Okay, we know that she purposely took Jewish slaves and she would give them back-breaking labor, and particularly on Shabbos. She loved working them, watching them, and forcing them to break Shabbos. That's what we know about Vashti. She may not have been the murderer of Haman's liking, but she was an evil person. And the Megillah has no hard feelings about her death. But at the end of the day, she didn't deserve the death penalty for not coming to the feast. It was just something stupid. What was it? It was Haman's evil plotting, trying to get somewhere. So what ends up happening is the very woman that takes the place of Vashti that he killed is the one that is responsible for his death, which of course is a powerful lesson for all of us, that sometimes when we do the wrong thing, it will come back to bite us. But that's, I suppose, another way of looking at it. But really what it shows us, more importantly, about Achashverosh is he's a man that kind of flows with the days. He flows with the times. At one moment, he's listening to that person. Yeah, sounds like good advice. He never had any strong values. He had no major principles. I spoke about on Tuesday night that we don't have the name of Hashem in the Megillah, and that every time it says Hamelech, it's referring to Hashem. So when it says Achashverosh without the word Hamelech, it's not referring to Hashem. Okay, but when it says Hamelech Achashverosh, then what's telling us that Hamelech, that Achashverosh at that time was, so to speak, the representative of Hashem going through the waves as the Jewish people go through their ups and downs of life and connection to God. Just like Achashverosh had his moments of up, so too the Jewish people have their moments of up. And God reflects us when we're in, so to speak, a good space with Hashem, a good relationship that will be good for us. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Haman. We've spoken a bit about Achashverosh. We've spoken a bit about the background behind the story. Let's talk a little bit about Haman. Now, Haman, as we all know, he comes from Amalek. Now, if you were in Shul this past week, you would have seen we had a very long Haftorah. What was the Haftorah of Shabbos Zachar? And Mark says he did 2 Haftorahs. It's okay. We did 2 Torahs, maybe. We took out the second Torah, we read Parsha Zachar. And by the way, it is actually an interesting thing, because we never had Shul the week before, it became a whole question which Torah reading you should do. Should you do the Torah reading of Zachor? Should you do it Zachor and Shkalim and Mishpatim? And if you're going to do Shkalim, do you do it first? You should have, I'm on these rabbinate chats, and that's when they get fun, because when you have all these weird questions, is, should we still read Shkalim because we missed it the week before? What about Mishpatim? What happens if you don't do Mishpatim to still do Shkalim? And if you're going to do Shkalim, do you do Shkalim first? Or do you do it second? Ideally, you should do Shkalim second after Zachor, but then you're going to have a problem of Torah. So if you're going to do Shkalim after Zachor, then you're going to have to do the Torah for Shkalim instead of for Zachor, but you're supposed to do the Torah for Zachor. So it gets all confusing. Anyway, just so you get an understanding of what was going back on this past week with Shul. We just did the simple way of simply, we only have 1 Torah in our Shul till next week, thanks to Sam and Shirley. We are just plugging next week's Torah celebration. We hope to see you all there. The point is that we read Zachor before Purim. It's a biblical commandment, right? The most important Torah reading, according to many opinions, of the entire year. And then we read Amalek. The story of King Saul supposing to kill Amalek. Now, what happens with the story over there in the Haftarah this past week? The Haftarah is, in a nutshell, King Saul starts to have the first major victories since the time of Samson. Now, the Jewish people, after they lost Joshua, they were really a bunch of little tribes, and they never really fought as a union. And that's one of the reasons why they wanted a king. So when King Saul comes into the picture, he unites the Jewish people, and they have incredible victories. They wipe out the Philistines and many of their enemies. Excuse me, something went in my way. So they wipe out their enemies, and they make themselves a much more united people. So King Samuel says, well, God always wanted the Jewish people to annihilate the Amalekites. Since when? Since the time of Moses, when the Jewish people left Egypt. So now it's your opportunity. You have the opportunity and the power to finally, once and for all, it's been a few hundred years since they made issues for the Jewish people. Once and for all, they're going to make lots of issues for the Jewish people in the future. If we don't erase them, let's erase them. Okay, King Saul goes to war against the Amalekites. He has mercy. He wipes them out, but he has mercy on the animals, some of the women, and the king, Agag. He thinks, let's rather bring it back alive. Captive alive is much better. And King Samuel the prophet comes back to King Saul and he says, oh, what have you done? You've made it. God told him first, one of basically the major issue with Saul is he doesn't even acknowledge his mistake, one issue, but not only that, by leaving those animals and the king of Amalek alive, he leaves the remnants alive, and that is the trouble that the Jewish people are going to be facing in the future, and particularly with the story of Purim and then with the Holocaust throughout our generations. So Haman is known as the continuation of Amalek. Who is Amalek? What does Haman represent? Amalek, what was Amalek? Amalek wanted to destroy the people, the Jewish people. When they left Egypt, everybody was afraid of of the Jewish people. They had managed to escape Egypt. They had brought 10 plagues, the sea had split. They're untouchable. Comes along Amalek and says, we're going to destroy them no matter what. I don't care about godliness. The very fact that they've had all these miracles is the reason to fight against them. So what do they represent? They represent the actual fight against spirituality, against godliness, against miracles, and absolute apathy to any belief of anything which is superior or miraculous. That's what they oppose. Haman is the same way. When he sees the Jewish people, what does he say to King Ahasuerus? Look, they're mufuzar umufurad beinamim v'dasehem shonot mikolam. They're dispersed amongst all your people, and their religion is different to everybody else. The way they practice in this spiritual way. They act differently. We can't handle that. I can't handle that. Let's just destroy them. That's what he wants to destroy. And that's the concept of Amalek. Now we're told that Amalek and Haman actually get their power from a spiritual source. And the spiritual source comes into the world all the way at the beginning of creation. Now, let's remember, all human beings come from one person, including Amalek. We all come from Adam, right? Adam and Eve. We all come from Adam and Eve. So where does Amalek come from? In other words, where does Amalek get in the picture? Adam is a good man. He sinned with eating from the tree of knowledge. What caused the tree of knowledge? Who caused the tree of knowledge? Was the snake. Nachash HaKadmoni. He's referred to as the Nachash HaKadmoni. I don't know how you translate that in English, but the original snake. That original snake is the representative of all evil that's going to come forth. Our job as people is going to be to transform the Nachash. But the Nachash, that snake, was there to oppose God. God creates his opposition, so to speak. This force that's going to be an evil force that's going to cause and push people to go against God. We're told that the Nachash, by pushing Chava and enticing Eve, to actually eat from the tree of knowledge, what he does is he gives some of his influence to Chava. Chava is impregnated, not physically, but spiritually by the Nachash, by the snake. And that will be dormant it will exist in the seed of the generations. And it will be the job of the Jewish people to transform the Nachash. By the way, when you talk, this is especially for Noach. Noach is the gematria professional amongst us, amongst many people. You just got to come to Chabad Dingley on a Shabbos and you'll hear some incredible gematrias. Gematrias are the way we calculate the numerical values of different words in the Torah and then find great significance. Anyway, now he did some splendid things this past Shabbos. But the word Nachash is, if you take the word Nachash, what's the numerical value for the word Nachash? Nun Chesh Shin. 358. Noach. What other word has the same numerical value as the word Nachash? Unmute yourself and tell us.
Tell me, go on.
No, go on.
No.
Did you figure it out?
No,
Okay. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but
it's okay.
okay,
It's okay.
let's take another word. There's another word which is Mashiach. Mashiach is Shin is 300, Yud is 10, 310, Mem 350, and the Ches is 358. Nachash and Mashiach is the same numerical value. The job, the Nachash and the Mashiach are the same thing. The only difference is that the one is outly bad, his representation of evil. Our job is to transform the Nachash into Mashiach. In other words, what we're saying is that the way the Nachash gets its power is from God. It's an evil existence, but it comes from God, right? Our job is to try to figure out and find that evil within it and to transform it into something holy. By some people, they are become so engrossed in the evilness of the snake, like Amalek. The way we transform some existences is by destroying them. That's the transformation. Who is like that? Amalek, Haman, because their power is purely from the Nachash.
Shkoch.
We
I'm gonna go.
have,
Thank you.
okay, no problem. Thanks, Noach. Sorry for putting you on the spot over there.
No problem. No worries at all. No worries. Bye. Thank
Okay.
you. Purim Sameach.
Purim Sameach. We'll see you tonight. Everyone's welcome to tonight to Megillah reading 8:30. So the Haman's whole job is to bring out that revelation of Mashiach inside of us through being the existence of something evil within the world. And when we destroy Haman, the Nachash, then something positive, we bring Mashiach. That's how we bring redemption. So every redemption will first be preceded by a Nachash. I've never thought of this, but it just before somebody else preempts me, something like the type of Joe thing would preempt me by saying, in the case of the first exile, we also started with the Nachash, right? With the snake, with Moshe going to Pharaoh and the stick. His first episode is the stick and the snake, and all those type of things. We know that there's the story in Egypt, in the desert, when the last year that they're in the desert, and the Jewish people start talking bad, and and they all get bitten by the snake, or they get there's a plague, and God tells Hashem to look at to create a snake, a stick, and to form the form of a snake on it, and people will look up to the snake and they will be transformed. It's not this week's parasha, it's towards the end of the Torah, Bamidbar. So I'm just mentioning here, but we see over there that by the people looking at the snake, which the snake represented the evil, but seeing how there's godliness within the snake, they're able to actually transform it. Okay, so that's some interesting ideas about Haman and his existence. What's the reason why, maybe this will be
Rabbi, I did look up something briefly. The ancient Egyptians, regarding snakes, they actually worshipped them, and especially the cobra.
Interesting. I think there's some people in India that still have some type of worship for snakes, or at least that's the way it's...
and the snake, the cobra, featured on a lot of the implements, the authority staffs of authority and authority symbols that the Egyptians used.
Interesting. It's interesting that Harry Potter also took on the realm of, for those that have read Harry Potter, the snake features quite heavily in Harry Potter as well, in the evil side of existence, which is quite an interesting concept. Okay, Thanks for that. There's I want to finish off with one or two words. Okay, I'll finish off with this word. When we look at the introduction to Mordechai, okay, Mordechai is as you know, we always talk about Esther being the savior, but Mordechai is the spiritual leader of the Jewish people. He's the one that starts everything off. He's the one that is the representative of Hashem, literally to the Jewish people, the Jewish people's leader. Mordechai is not what's the word, introduced to us till the second chapter, but right at the beginning of the second chapter, it says like this: Ish Yehudi hayab b'Shushan habira u'shmo Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish ish Shimini, and we say that actually all out loud together. We start at the second chapter. That's the first thing we say out loud is the statement about Ish Yehudi. Now here's something interesting. We call him Ish Yehudi. The man from who's a Yehudi. What is a Yehudi? Literally, it means the man from the tribe of Yehuda. But then it goes on, Ish Yehudi u'shmo Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ish Yemeni, and he calls him a Yemenite. He's from, what's a Yemeni? Yemeni is somebody from the tribe of Benjamin. Now we know that post the exile of the first 10 lost tribes, which was some 100 years prior to this.
Rabbi, I have to go. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Happy Purim. The story of the Jewish people's exile from the 10 lost tribes, I should say. All those people were called Israel. After that occurs, the Jewish people are from then on referred to as the Yehudim, which literally is translated as the Jews. We got that name, some people think actually from the Gentiles. But who remained from the Jewish people? The Kohanim, the Levites, so basically the tribe of Levi, the tribe of Yehuda, those were more or less complete, the tribe of Benjamin, and part of the tribe of Shimon. Now the tribe of Benjamin, a story for another time, was a tiny tribe. Most of them had been wiped out. But that's who really remains from the Jewish people. We're told about Mordechai, he's referred to as Ish Yemeni. Now, if you look at the name Benjamin, Benjamin was given his name by his father. All the sons of Yaakov were given their names more or less by Rachel and Leah. Rachel gives birth to Benjamin on her deathbed as she dies in childbirth. And as Benjamin comes out, she calls him Ben, what's the word? Ben Sari or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording, which basically means the child, or Ben Oini, which means the child of my afflictions. And Yaakov does not like that name. He doesn't want the child to be walking around with a stamp all over him that says, I killed my mom. It just doesn't sound like a great idea for any child to walk around with that on their head. So he's the only child that he actually changes the name, and he changes the name to Ben Yamin, which means the child of my right hand side. Now, we look at Mordechai. Mordechai, he's a Ish Yehudi, but he comes from the tribe of Benjamin. He's a descendant of King Saul. Now, why am I telling you this? King Saul was the only king from the tribe, not from the tribe of Yehuda. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. What was King Saul's great error that made him lose? What was his great mistake that he made? His great error was that he didn't destroy Amalek. But who does destroy Amalek? His descendant, Mordechai. We haven't destroyed Amalek, but who's the one that ends up fighting Amalek is Mordechai. But Mordechai takes the power that he's got from King Saul, but he also takes the power that he has from being a Yehudi. A Yehudi is a person, so he has He, on the one hand, we refer to him as Yemini, which means from the tribe of Benjamin, to show you that he's rectifying King Saul's thing, but his strength he gets from the kingship of King Yehuda, of Yehudi, that he's a Yehudi because the main kingdom is from King David, who was earlier, and that's the Yehudim. The power to destroy Amalek comes from the attribute of Yehuda. What's Yehuda? Yehuda means subjugation, gratefulness, acknowledgement, and total humility to God. That is the ultimate quality of a Jewish king, of King David, and that's the ultimate quality that will vanquish, as I mentioned earlier, the snake, which is Amalek. The way we transform Amalek is through the power of Yehuda, through the power of the acknowledgement and the absolute subjugation to God. What was King Saul's ultimate failure? That he never listened to God. He took up his own ideas. God said, utterly destroy the Jewish people. And he said, the people of Amalek, and he leaves a few behind. Because God couldn't have been referring to that. That's not the attribute of the ultimate king. The way to ultimately destroy Amalek, ultimately destroy evil, is with absolute, total acquiescence to God. The path of Yehuda. So Mordechai has both concepts in him. He has, the one hand, he has the power of King Saul, who is the powerful king that unites the Jewish people at first, but he's lacking, and his big flaw is that he doesn't destroy Amalek. But why doesn't he destroy Amalek? Because he was lacking in what? In Yehudi, in acknowledgement and absolute bittul, subjugation to God. And therefore Mordechai is called Ish Yehudi. He's the man that does have that ultimate acknowledgement and subjugation to God, and therefore he's able to rectify what King Saul had messed up, where he was flawed. It's an interesting concept. I want to just finish off with one more point. We're told about Mordechai, he's the leader of the Jewish people. True leader of the Jewish people is with the Jewish people in the good times and the bad times. After the story of Purim happens, Mordechai is appointed in Haman's place. What position did Haman have? He was a viceroy to Achashverosh, who was second in command. Mordechai receives that permission, we're told, at Kol Beit Haman, son of Mordechai, or Esther, and Esther gives it to Mordechai. Basically, he's appointed both by Esther and Achashverosh together. Mordechai gets that position. And what they do is they mint coins in Mordechai's honor. And those coins have, on the one side, they have an image of Mordechai in sackcloth, and on the other side, they have an image of Mordechai as a viceroy, as a king, to teach us that as a Jewish leader, he was a true Benjamite. He was the son of our affliction. He was there during the time of Oni, of pain and suffering, but he was also Ben Yemini. He was also there, and he got to therefore be there also in our time of celebration on our right-hand side, and became the viceroy. And with that thought, I'll leave you off. And wish you all a happy and wonderful Purim. To see you soon.
Time
If
for
anybody
questions.
has any quick questions, please go ahead.
Rav, is there any link between the name Ben Oni and Bain Oni from the between the Rasha and the Tzaddik?
That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. Ben Oni. I don't know. I've never thought of that. Interesting. No idea.
Okay. And my other question
maybe
is,
if I come up with something, I will let you know. I'm not promising I'll look, because I'm running. It's a crazy day, so I'm not promising to look up anything for you at this point.
And a very quick question. I saw for the first time, or I noted for the first time this morning in Slichot, that they refer to Esther as Hadassah. I've never heard of Esther referred to as Hadassah.
Okay. So Esther Hadassah is the real name of Esther was Hadassah. That is her real name. That's what she was given at childbirth by her mother. That's what she was called by Mordechai. When Esther is taken to the palace, Mordechai says, I don't want anybody to know that you're Jewish. It will be dangerous for you. It's not going to be safe for you. And therefore, I'm going to give you a new name, and your new name will be Esther.
Okay.
I spoke a little bit about this on Tuesday night, and that show we focused a lot on Esther. But the very concept of Esther is the concept of concealment. Ki anochi astir astir panai, that God says, I will hide my face. And that's why we don't see the name, the very name of the story of Purim is Megillat Esther, the story of God's concealment. But obviously, it has the double meaning of the fact that it's also the story of Esther.
Okay, I've got to leave now. Thanks, Rob. You're going to come collect that stuff.
Yes, please God. Thanks, David.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, that's it.
No? Okay. So I want to wish you all a wonderful Purim. You're welcome to join us. We have 8:30 tonight, Megillah reading in Dingley, and the 1 o'clock tomorrow we have a Megillah reading and Purim party in Cheltenham, and 6 p.m. tomorrow. If you want to still book for that, you can in the golf course. All right. Have a wonderful Purim.
Thanks,
Thank you. You too. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.